Hello everyone! Welcome to Guro at Estudyanteng Pinoy channel or JEP channel. Our lesson for today is adding two integers with different signs. Now before we discuss our lesson proper, let's first recall our previous lesson adding two integers with like signs. Okay, pag pareho yung signs, how do we add the two integers? So here's the technique. Simply add the two integers and affix or copy the common signs. So that's the technique in adding two integers with like signs. Now what about in adding two integers with different signs? So we have here 2 plus -5, -2 plus +15. So magkaiba yung sign nila. What is the rule? Now in this lesson, I am not going to teach you any rule, but I am going to teach you a 3-step technique. So what are these steps? What are the steps, I should say? So step 1, identify the sign. Step 2, subtract. Then step 3, affix the sign in the final answer. So step 1, identify muna natin yung sign. Step 2, we subtract. Then step 3, kung ano yung sign na nakuha natin sa step 1, that will be the sign of our final answer. Okay, so let's discuss each step further. Step 1, identify first the sign of the answer. Now, how do we do that? Take note of this. The sign of the answer is the same as the sign of the integer with larger absolute value. Okay, in our two examples, we have here 2 and -5. Now, in terms of absolute value, meaning disregarding the signs, mas malaki yung 5 kaysa sa 2. Okay, so the sign that we're going to copy will be the negative sign. Okay, now here we have -8 plus 20, mas mataas yung 20. So the sign that we will copy will be positive. So that's how to identify the sign of the final answer. Okay, kunin mo lang or kopyahin lang yung sign ng mas mataas na number in terms of their absolute values. Then step 2, we subtract the two integers. And when you subtract, take note of this. Always larger minus the smaller. Okay, disregarding the negative sign. So in our example, it should be 5 minus 2. When you subtract, it should be 5 minus 2. And 20 minus 8. Okay, and step 3, affix the sign in the final answer. Okay, so let's have some concrete examples. Okay, example 1, 8 plus -10. Now, step 1, we identify the sign. Okay, how do you identify? Tingnan mo lang kung alin ang mas mataas in terms of absolute value. Is it the 8 or the 10? It's 10, right? And what is the sign of 10? It's negative. So that will be the sign of our answer. Next, step 2, we just subtract the two numbers. So 10 minus 8, the answer is 2. And then step 3, we affix the sign in the final answer. Or we simply combine step 1 and step 2. So our final answer is -2. Okay, next let's have another example. 15 plus -10. Okay, step 1, we identify the sign. Okay, alin ang mas mataas? Disregarding their signs, 15 or 10. It's 15, right? And the sign of 15 is positive. Next, we subtract the two numbers. When you subtract, you disregard the signs. So, laging yung mas mataas ang mauna. Okay, 15 minus 10 is equal to 5. And then, step 3, you just combine step 1 and step 2. So, our final answer is positive 5. Okay, example 3, -20 plus 17. Okay, identify the sign. Okay, mas mataas yung 20 in terms of absolute value. At ang sign ng 20 ay negative. So that will be the sign of our final answer. And step 2, subtract the two numbers. 20 minus 17, the answer is 3. So we combine step 1 and step 2. Our answer is -3. Then, example 4, 50 plus -30. Okay, what is the sign of our final answer? The sign of 50, which is positive. Okay, so kasi mas mataas yung 50 kaysa sa 30. Then, we subtract 50 minus 30. The answer is 20. So, our final answer is positive 20. And let's have the last example. Negative 50 plus 30. Okay, step 1, identify the sign. Okay, we copy the sign of 50 kasi mas mataas yung 50 kaysa sa 30 in terms of absolute value, and the sign is negative. Then we subtract 50 minus 30, the answer is 20. Combine the sign and the answer in step 2, so negative 20. That's the final answer. Okay, let's try on your own this time. Let's have practice problem 1. 150 plus negative 200. Step 1, identify the sign. Then step 2, subtract. Then step 3, affix the sign in the final answer, or just combine step 1 and step 2. So the final answer is correct. It's negative 50. Next, practice problem 2, negative 80 plus 100. Step 1, step 2. The final answer is positive 20. Next, practice problem 3. Negative 40 plus 50. Identify the sign. Subtract. The final answer is correct. Positive 10. Next, practice problem 4. Negative 25 plus 20. Identify the sign. Subtract. The final answer is negative 5. And let's have the last practice problem. Positive 30 plus negative 70. Identify the sign. Next, subtract. And the final answer is negative 40. Okay, so that's how to add two integers with different signs. Let's have now a recap of our lesson. So we have here the 3-step technique in adding two integers with different signs. Step 1, identify the sign. Okay, when you identify the sign, just look at the integer with larger absolute value. Okay, so tingnan mo lang kung alin ang mas mataas, disregarding the negative signs. And you copy the sign of that number. That will be the sign of the final answer. Next, step 2, subtract. When you subtract, it's always larger minus the smaller. Then step 3, you affix the sign in the final answer, or you simply combine step 1 and step 2. Okay, so that's the 3-step technique in adding two integers with different signs.